A seemingly ordinary day at the park. An innocent girl was simply enjoying herself, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Within minutes, what began as a moment of leisure turned into a scene that outraged an entire nation. A police officer, driven by cruel prejudice, chose to intimidate a defenseless child, leaving a trail of fear and indignation. But what he didn't anticipate was an epic twist: the arrival of Dwayne Johnson, a real-life hero who not only stood up for the girl, but also exposed a social wound many try to ignore. This is the kind of story that touches the soul. From shocking abuse of power to an inspiring act of courage, you're about to embark on a journey of injustice, redemption, and a life lesson you'll never forget. Get ready to uncover all the details of a case that made headlines and mobilized millions worldwide. What began as a calm afternoon in a park ended as a symbol of resistance and hope. But how does this story really end? It was just another ordinary day at the city's Central Park. Children ran around carefree while families enjoyed the shade of trees, savoring moments of leisure. Ava, a 10-year-old girl, was skateboarding with a radiant smile that shone like the sun filtering through the leaves. But what seemed like a normal day was about to turn into a nightmare. From across the park, a tall police officer with a stern gaze and rigid posture watched the girl with unsettling interest. Something was about to change, and no one could predict how intense the events to come would be. As Ava practiced her skateboarding tricks, the officer approached her with firm steps. His authoritative tone shattered the peaceful ambiance of the park. "Hey girl, what are you doing here?" The prejudice in his voice left Ava frozen. She could barely respond as he demanded identification and asked nonsensical questions for a child her age. A few bystanders paused, hesitant to intervene, fearing retaliation. Fear hung thick in the air, mirrored by Ava's confused and terrified expression. Not far away, Laura, Ava's mother, sensed something was wrong. Her heart raced as she ran toward her daughter, driven by an instinctive fear that her little one was in danger. When she arrived, she found Ava crying, surrounded by the officer who insisted on treating her like a criminal. Laura didn't hesitate. "What's going on here? Why are you intimidating my daughter?" Her firm voice carried a blend of indignation and maternal love, a force challenging the officer to provide an explanation. The officer, however, maintained his aggressive stance. He looked at Laura with disdain, ignoring her words while continuing to accuse the girl of something he never clarified. The confrontation escalated, and the small crowd that had gathered began to murmur. "This isn't right," whispered a voice in the group. But who would dare to act? The tension was palpable, as if the air itself had grown heavier. Everyone seemed to be waiting for someone or something to break the oppressive cycle. Then suddenly, the unexpected happened. A tall, muscular man with an imposing presence stepped out from the crowd. His determined gaze and expression, a mix of calm and outrage, were impossible to ignore. It was Dwayne Johnson. The crowd murmured in shock as he walked forward, heading straight for the officer. In that moment, a new chapter of this story began to unfold. Dwayne Johnson wasn't just a familiar face due to his fame. There, in the middle of the park, he was a man driven by genuine indignation. As he approached the officer, his voice resonated with an authority that transcended titles or uniforms. "Do you think this is how the law should be enforced?" Intimidating a child, his presence instantly changed the atmosphere. The crowd, which had hesitated moments before, seemed to draw courage from Dwayne, who wasn't just confronting the officer but also standing up against an injustice everyone could feel. The officer hesitated for a moment but tried to maintain his superior stance. "This is none of your business," he retorted, but his words lacked conviction under Dwayne's piercing gaze. "It is when you abuse your power against someone who can't defend themselves," Dwayne replied, his conviction silencing even the murmurs around them. It felt as though the entire park was frozen in that scene, every breath held in anticipation of what would happen next. Meanwhile, Ava and Laura watched closely. The little girl, still frightened, found some relief in seeing someone stand up for her. Laura, her eyes brimming with tears, felt a mixture of gratitude and anger. Dwayne's stance wasn't just a defense for her daughter, it was a message to everyone there. No one should suffer in silence in the face of injustice. He positioned himself as a barrier between the officer and Ava, standing like a true wall against oppression. The crowd began to record the confrontation. Phones appeared everywhere, capturing every word, every gesture. What initially seemed like an isolated act was taking on a new dimension. Dwayne, aware of the situation's impact, looked directly at the cameras, as if addressing not just those present but a far larger audience. "This needs to stop," "And it stops now," he declared, his voice filled with determination. All attention was fixed on him as the officer began to falter. But Dwayne knew this wasn't the end. The officer took a step back, unsettled, but not yet fully conceding. The battle was far from over, but something had shifted. The crowd, once silent, began murmuring words of support. The environment was transforming, and though no one knew exactly how it would end, one thing was certain: the world was watching. The confrontation at the park, initially an isolated incident, quickly transcended the boundaries of that space. The videos recorded by witnesses began circulating on social media within minutes. Every captured second displayed the abuse, the courage, and the outrage that reverberated throughout the park. It didn't take long for hashtags like Tyner Justice for Ava and Wawer Dwayne Against Abuse to dominate trending topics, connecting thousands of people who shared the same feelings, anger, and a demand for change. The comments on the posts exploded. "This is unacceptable," wrote one user. "Dwayne is a modern-day hero," said another. But it wasn't just words of support. The community began to act. Lawyers offered their services to Ava and her family. Civil rights organizations shared the videos, amplifying the reach of the denunciation. It was as though the collective outrage had found its spark, and Ava's case became a symbol of something much bigger. Meanwhile, Laura struggled to process everything that was happening. She held Ava's hand tightly, protecting her as she always had, but now she felt she was no longer alone. The support they received wasn't just virtual. At the park, neighbors and strangers approached to offer comforting words, while others volunteered to testify if needed. The solidarity, once silent, was now visible and tangible, bringing hope amidst the chaos. The videos also caught the attention of the press. Reporters rushed to the scene, interviewing witnesses and demanding answers from the authorities. The pressure mounted by the hour, and the silence from the police department became unsustainable. Ava's face, vulnerable yet determined, began to represent not just one girl but thousands of children who face injustices daily. The story was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone who saw themselves in the fight against a broken system. With the growing uproar, a sense of anticipation filled the air. What had started as outrage was now transforming into a demand for concrete actions. Something needed to be done, and fast. The question dominating social media and conversations was clear: how will this end? Ava's case was far from resolved, but it was already impossible to ignore. Society's response showed that the fight was just beginning. The viral spread of Ava's case forced the authorities to act. Under immense public pressure, the police department announced an internal investigation. The officer, identified as a veteran with a history of similar complaints, was placed on administrative leave. But for the community, that wasn't enough. With the support of lawyers and civil rights organizations, Ava's mother, Laura, filed a lawsuit demanding full justice. The trial began in a packed courtroom, with cameras outside broadcasting every detail. Laura testified with a mix of pain and determination, describing the trauma her daughter had endured. The videos recorded at the park became crucial evidence, exposing the officer's abusive behavior and Dwayne's heroic intervention. Meanwhile, the accused officer tried to justify his actions, but his words rang hollow against the undeniable footage and the tears of a mother who just wanted to protect her child. The case ignited a heated debate about racism and abuse of power within law enforcement. On television shows and social media, experts discussed the need for reforms and greater accountability. Peaceful protests took place outside the courthouse, with signs bearing messages like "Justice for Ava" and "End abuse of power." The societal impact of the trial was undeniable. Every decision made by the judge seemed to carry the weight of an entire community's expectations. On the day of the verdict, a tense silence filled the courtroom. When the judge finally declared the officer guilty of misconduct and abuse of authority, the relief was immediate. Laura embraced Ava as applause erupted inside and outside the courtroom. The victory didn't erase the trauma, but it symbolized a turning point in the case and perhaps a small step toward a fairer society. But this was only part of the story. The legal victory was significant, but what came next was equally critical. Ava and Laura's emotional healing and the continued fight for systemic change. The lingering question remained: how could this triumph be turned into something greater, benefiting not just Ava but all children facing similar situations? After the trial ended, Ava and Laura began the challenging journey of recovery. The emotional scars left by the incident wouldn't fade easily, but the support they received was crucial. At their modest home, Flowers, letters, and gifts from strangers arrived daily. Some messages were from parents who saw Laura as an inspiration, while others came from children who sent drawings to Ava, showing her she wasn't alone. Laura, who once saw herself solely as a mother, now embraced an unexpected role, that of a spokesperson. Invitations to give speeches, interviews, and attend events began pouring in, and she decided to accept despite initial nerves. In every opportunity, she spoke about the impact of racism, the importance of collective courage, and how the community's support was vital in turning pain into strength. Her words deeply resonated with audiences, planting seeds of reflection and change. Ava, on the other hand, found solace in art. Inspired by the drawings she received, she began painting as a way to express her emotions. Her work, which depicted scenes of hope and unity, caught the attention of local galleries. Before long, she held her first exhibition, where one of her pieces, titled My Voice, was auctioned to raise funds for anti-racism initiatives. It was her way of turning pain into something beautiful and meaningful. The case's impact extended beyond Ava and Laura's lives. Civil rights organizations used their story as an example to push for broader changes. Educational campaigns were launched in schools, while legislative initiatives proposed measures to combat abuse of authority. Ava and Laura became symbols of a greater cause, proving that even in the face of adversity, it's possible to fight for a better future. Still, for them, the greatest challenge was rebuilding trust in the world around them. Each of Ava's smiles and every one of Laura's speeches was a small victory against the fear that still lingered in their lives. And while society continued debating and seeking solutions, mother and daughter remained steadfast, reminding everyone that change begins with stories like theirs but doesn't end there. Ava and Laura's story is more than a tale of injustice. It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest situations, courage and solidarity can transform lives. What we've witnessed here isn't just an isolated case, but a call for each of us to reflect on the world we're building. How many other Avas still need protection? How many more Dwaynes must rise to confront the injustices that persist? And you? How can you be part of this change? Share in the comments what impacted you most about this story and how you believe we can build a better future. We want to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss incredible stories like this one. Your presence here is essential to give voice to causes that truly matter. Together, we can make a difference. After all, it's with small actions that great transformations happen. See you next time.